America is walking away from religion in record numbers, yet tens of millions still tune into church online every week. So which story is actually true? Is faith really dying, or is it just changing addresses? We're digging into what the data actually says, why families are quietly finding their way back, and what it really means when the fastest growing congregation in the country doesn't have a building at all. If you put it in context with the Pew research that's been done, it falls right in line almost with what's going on in the decline in traditional religions.
Yes, but right now the Christian church is in a bit of a resurgence because of the murder of Charlie Kirk.
There has been an increase in the last 2 years in the numbers going into the Christian church, but it tends to be families with kids who are trying to connect into community, is what it's saying. And that
I
makes
understand
sense.
that. Sure,
Yeah.
people go back to their roots with their kids because they want them to have that foundation too. I get it.
And
My
especially,
parents took me to church, but they didn't stay.
oh
They
wow,
dropped us off.
Dropped us off at Sunday school.
Yeah, on Sunday mornings. Now, there was a period of time where they went, but largely they didn't.
My parents would go up until we got into our teens. They stopped going. My dad went periodically, but not all the time. My mother was Baptist, Southern Baptist, and my father was Catholic. There's a lot more people, according to the research, that are online finding this kind of thing.
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
When we were in Asheville, North Carolina we started in 95. So what is that? 30 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And we had a 300 seat sanctuary. Great. That's what we could hold. We never grew to where we had to have two services or two services, we'll call them. But online, we had an amazing response. We were averaging 25,000 visits to our website and our YouTube channel every week.
Wow.
I know. And we would get reports on where those people were.
Yeah.
Right.
It was fascinating to me.
All over the world.
My mind.
Yeah.
But people were looking for it all over the world.
When I was doing the podcast, which we did with Lee Wallach in Dallas, he and I, for years, first 2 or 3 years, we had very few people that seemed to be tuned in. And by the third year, and we were just doing a 40-minute podcast like this, and most of it had to do with new thought and philosophy and that kind of thing. And by the time we were moving and I stopped doing the podcast, we were up to 3,000-4,000 people on a regular basis, of which over 60% of them were outside the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and they were from all over. China, we had it from France, we had them from Germany. So
here's an interesting story from ours. We had them all over the world as well. And we would get reports as to which countries they came from, but that's all we got. And 1 month, the largest non-American market that we were in was in Eastern Europe. I think it was Estonia.
Oh.
And I made the mistake of saying that on stage.
Oh.
Boasting that we had a large audience in Estonia. The next month, we had none. It's like,
they got arrested.
Came in.
And they go, oh, no, we can't do that.
Yeah.
Who's listening? Who's watching? How did they know that?
No thinking.
It was over.
No thinking in Estonia.
So I never mentioned anything about that again.
Wow.
Yeah, we never said anything about the audience and the numbers, because even if it was China, it could have been one of the big cities, and who knows what the governments were doing in some of these places.
That was obviously what I did, naively thinking it was okay to say that. It was not.
Yeah, we have friends right now in Bulgaria who was in the church, and they do a lot of stuff. And I said, geez, you should come on with us. And They said, absolutely not.
I did think that we demonstrated that the real future of this movement may well be online. As much as I resist that, as much as I love the idea of connecting physically, energetically with people, I don't know the way the world's moving right now. I don't know that that's going to be a viable way forever.
Yeah, well, I think we're seeing that this new age of quantum stuff is beginning to shift everything. With AI out there, you can do a lot of this research online. You don't have to get into a group of people. And a lot of the younger crowd is more into finding this stuff out for themselves in an isolated environment.
You can have a discussion with AI on your questions.
Anything. It's amazing. And it acts like it's your friend.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so people maybe feel good about that, because one thing I've discovered with this AI model is you feed it the data you want it to have, and it responds all on that. Doesn't question you. Doesn't say, have you thought about blah, blah? Could you possibly be doing this instead? Or give you another alternative. It just buys what you says and feeds it back to you that it absolutely supports you. And that's crazy.
Yeah, and the thing is that you have to tell it explicitly that it has to be honest based on the research outside of what you're telling it, or it is just a feedback loop. It's its simplest way of just taking your prose and shifting it around and giving it back to you.
Exactly. And it will support you even if your whole vision is flawed.
Yeah.
And because it wants you to keep coming back. I mean, it doesn't, but it's designed for you to keep coming back.
In terms of the number of people that have left the various movements, do you think it was impacted very much by COVID?
Absolutely, because it was across the board.
Yeah.
25% of our centers, 25% of Christian churches in general, gone.
Yeah.
Not to come back. Now, will different things happen? Will things emerge again and move forward? Sure, they will. Of course they will. But that took a big hit on the whole idea of spiritual community.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that online is so much easier to do almost anything. You know, you can go to college now and get your degrees online. You can work online. A friend of mine up the hill here in Mexico, you know, he's a top programmer for a company and he works from home and has for 5 years here.
From another country.
So I was having a conversation with someone this morning about someone who used to come to our center down here in South Florida. And she goes and she's had a conversation with these other people, and she asked them, why aren't you coming to the center anymore? And they say, oh, it's just so easy to get up on Sunday morning, be in your pajamas, get your cup of coffee and turn on the live stream. What's missing there's a couple things missing. Obviously, no connection with real people. And the other part is they're not giving any money. There's no flow. And because of that, it's just not, it's not helping. It's not filling in the gaps there.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is that time period of trying to figure out how all of this works and how it's going to work in terms of centers as well as classes. For example, classes have also gone online, you know?
Well, but you have many times you have to register for a class and pay a fee in advance. So in that case, it's different than a Sunday morning scenario.
Yeah, and I think it's a better scenario. You also get deeper into the topics, not just a 30-minute
that's the nature of classes.
Yeah.
Right.
So instead of just being like The Secret, where it's a transactional, think about it and you'll get it. You dive into it in a class and find out why all this takes place. And that's part of what's been missing is everybody got into the whole what the bleep and The Secret. And they thought, well, this is just a quick way to fix everything that's wrong in my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we did lose people as a result of that. We gained people initially, and then I think we lost people as a result of that. They got into, this is not working. So
And they don't know why, so they assume it's false. It's not false. They
Right.
just don't fully understand it yet.
or
And
they
they
blame
haven't made the
themselves,
adjustments. Pardon me?
or they blame themselves.
Yeah, a lot of people do
And they
that.
don't want to look at that.
Yeah.
That it's their thinking that's keeping this or not bringing in this, and the need for community is being found elsewhere.
Yeah.
So how does what we're doing with the podcast fit into all of that? Because we're online and we're talking about some of these subjects, and it's tough to monetize these things as well, because I found two and a half years of doing a podcast, I think we made $50.
Congratulations.
And 25 of that was mine.
Well, I think that in most cases, something like this, which would be a giveaway, should direct people to something else that's deeper or longer or more significant that they would pay for.
Yeah.
It has to monetize something somehow.
Yeah. I think classes, if there were classes going on that we could point people to, that would be a benefit, because you can't get as much as you can from a class just from a podcast like this. So,
Right.
No, because
so
actually several
but the
days.
world is so changing. We can't use the old rules to make this work in the future. And frankly, I'm not at all convinced the organization is going to remain viable. The principles will always be viable.
Yeah.
Once people understand them.
The principles have been around for ages, so it's not about that.
Millennia.
Thank you. I've got a list of stuff that's changing in the way we function in the age of AI. Listen, it's a quick list.
Yeah.
We forget how to read maps.
Yeah.
We don't know phone numbers at all anymore.
I was just thinking that.
Many people can't read or write handwriting. We just listen to AI tell us what it is, and we accept it. Basic survival skills. We all used to know how we would live through being lost in the woods for a while. Not anymore. That's not part of it.
Or a nuclear disaster.
Yeah, exactly. All of that.
Or just
obviously, you get under your desk for that.
I was just listening yesterday to a YouTube of a bunch of scientists and AI people, and they were talking about the existential threat is that the need for the mind and body is going to dissipate rapidly over the next 25 to 50 years. And because all the knowledge is out there in these quantum computers, and the physicality of things is it's tough to run this body through 70 years. So is that going to take place? Are we going to find over the next 50 or 100 years that the human species is going to go away? Somebody brought up on that show, they said, think about the monkeys, the apes, and back in that time period of they were there, were they conceptualizing what the next generation would look like after them? What would it be like? And could they have imagined that there would be something that was somewhat like them, but was doing all this other stuff? And that's an interesting question. Are we going to morph and change over time, just like our centers have done? Are we going to go by the wayside? This could all be generated by AI that's going on right now. We're not actually here.
What do you think, Jay?
Will we even need our bodies even in this corporeal existence? I can't see that happening, because it's such a part of this existence.
Well, let's take another look at it. Will we need to work, or will AI handle most things that need to be done?
Well, that's a given.
You don't.
So how will we sustain ourselves if we're not bringing value to life?
Yeah, well, here's the question that I have and posed to a couple of folks, including I sit on the board of a company, and I said, it's really interesting. When we had the meeting, 16,000 more people were laid off by Amazon, and 12,000 more programmers in Silicon Valley were laid off. And the rate is getting bigger and bigger every day. of the number of people being laid off by AI. And the question is, at some point, nobody will be able to consume what all of these things are producing. Therefore, there's going to be a collapse, right? Because where's the monetary exchange going to take place anymore? It's not going to take place of people buying the necessary things to survive because they can't. They don't have any income. They don't have a job. So who's going to buy all the Amazon products?
So to this conversation you're having, I want to add a piece. Greg Braden, his most recent book is called Being Human.
Yeah.
And it's about injecting computer chips into our brains so that we have instant access to information. And he speaks vehemently against this and how it's dehumanizing human beings, but that there's a whole movement toward that being the way it's done in the future. That when babies are born, these things are inserted, and that you have that capacity in your life that keeps you competitive and above the fray and all of that. And maybe he says doing that, we will lose what naturally we have as far as handling information, and this whole idea of being human will be forever altered.
Because there will be no development.
Yeah, no, it'll be technology, not evolution.
Right. There'll be no childhood development. There'll be no need for community development because all the intellect is there.
So I go back to my mantra in my life at this point, and that is, it's a good time to be old.
Well, I'm a champion of that.
So do you think that part of this is that so much of this information is available and that people don't need a spiritual community, even online? They don't need to go. There's so much information, even the spirituality of science of mind and the like philosophies. You're getting that in prosperity gospel folk. In fact, I have heard, I won't mention names, because it's just a well-known rumor, I can say, but one of the biggest of the prosperity folks, one of their speechwriters is a New Thought person, is actually a science of mind trained. I don't know if that person was a minister, if they got to that point, and they're writing that pastor's talks, or they're helping write.
Oh, it's a pastor in a traditional
community
teaching prosperity.
Who's on television and the radio as well, so it's a big.
Well, that's smart.
And I've listened to that person many times, and I'm like, yeah, you said everything but Ernest Holmes said, or Charles Fillmore said, or whoever.
Yeah, and his father did the same thing, by the way.
Did his father do the same thing too? Oh, I didn't know that.
He had 2 science of mind practitioners that wrote his talks.
Really? Oh.
Wasn't as successful as his son, which became a
nothing's
megachurch.
as successful as the son. Now that I know who we're talking about.
Yeah. I knew it'd get obvious soon, but that's what I heard. Now, I never heard that about.
But the question remains that even if we have a chip put in our head, there's something within us that wants to know more about this thing that I am. What am I? And that there's something that calls from within us to try to figure out, to understand the truth of who we are. That's been around for, since human beings have been around.
But not everyone is that way.
No, but that's the evolution of things.
That's the edge, you're right.
Are we finding that all of this internet and the possible chip and everything is making humans lazy? Like you were saying, John, critical thinking is barely being taught anymore in school.
Correct.
It's just facts. Even when we were going to school, do you remember when we were going to school, you weren't allowed to bring, well, this is a phone, but you weren't allowed to bring a calculator into
No.
class.
Absolutely not.
You better figure it out.
And now it's mandatory. You have to bring a calculator in.
Have to bring a laptop.
Yeah, probably so.
Or an iPad of some sort or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you have access. Yeah, and teachers have to specifically say you cannot use AI to write this paper. But even that, I think, is waning.
Yeah, in the schools down here in Mexico, the ones that we visited, and we've been in several communities and visited the schools, there isn't a telephone to be found. There isn't a laptop to be found. There isn't any of that. They're using pencil and paper, and they're learning.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
So it may not be necessarily, it may be true of first world countries where this is taking place, but certainly not second and third world countries who can't afford a phone.
Right.
And what's that going to do? How is that going to, how would we function on a global scale if we have these different levels of humanity? Some who have this advanced ability, technical ability, and others who have pencil and paper. You know, how do you consolidate that into a human race?
Evolution solves that. It solves that by one taking over the other.
Yikes.
Yes,
that's how wars happen.
With a lack of critical thinking, ignorance shows up a lot more often. Because they're getting the simplest thing. It's becomes black or white, meaning, you know, right or left, right or wrong. There's no gray areas to consider because they won't consider them because they're getting instant information and accepting it without any consideration. If it matches either what they were brought up as or with, or something they believe because they feel the world's against them, then they're going to go the simple route, which is usually the dangerous route because there's no thinking. It's just an acceptance. Even in the philosophy that we're in, you have to have critical thinking. You can't just sit and accept all is one and thoughts are things, and I can change my thinking, change my life. Those are great and true and important, but you still have to go past that. Or you end up like people who watched The Secret, did what they thought that movie was telling them to do. It didn't work because they didn't work on the shadow and adding feeling in it and all these other parts of the dimensions of creating your life through your belief system consciously. Obviously you're doing it anyway, but consciously. And then it didn't work for them because the money didn't show up or the health or the relationship or anything like that. And then they went, well, this stuff doesn't work. I'm going back to traditional stuff or whatever.
Yeah, and it didn't work because every time they would do the affirmation, that little voice in the back of their head would say, nah, not really.
And they bought into that.
But they thought they were doing it because they were saying it or writing it. That's never enough.
Yeah.
That's why classes are important, is because you get instant feedback from others who have the experience. And the other thing is that word experience. What's the experience you have of this, not what's the intellect of it? Yes. One part leads you to the other. Hopefully you see this and you go, oh, that makes sense. Let me see how this works. And you go to a class and you have people around you who are going through something similar. And so you have some camaraderie with them, and you can ask questions and go back and forth about it. I mean, we usually had about 30 people in our classes, and it's a good mix of people asking really important questions from their lives.
And
I don't see that happening online. What's the experience, the actual experience you'll have?
There's not enough feedback, especially if you got 30 people on a Zoom call.
Oh, yeah.
Not everybody's gonna speak up.
It's unmanageable.
It really is.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Lecturing only gets you to a point. What I've always said is that our principles are pretty easy, but applying them takes real work.
Yes.
And it doesn't happen just naturally because you listen to what somebody said. And that the beauty of spiritual community is that it's a place where you can practice this stuff.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to go out and do some of this stuff with people that have no idea what you're talking about.
I have a friend who started an organization, and it's called the Unlearning Institute.
I love it.
And what it's all about, and by the way, they were both of them that started it were Christian scientists. And what they're all about is you got to unlearn all that nonsense that you've learned over a lifetime and find a way to shelve it or to ignore it to a certain extent as you begin to learn more about what we're teaching in these principles.
Right.
And I love
that's
that.
that thing we always say is that the universe abhors a void. You can't just not know something that you've known all your life. You have to replace it with something.
Yeah, it's replacement, right?
And then the question becomes whether replacing it is really what's necessary. Do we ignore the ego? And then, of course, the question is what part of us is ignoring the ego? Because the ego seems to be very dramatic and doesn't like to be ignored. Can you get to a place to where it's simply doing what it's doing and it'll quiet itself down when nobody's paying attention to it? And you find out who it is that's listening to it. I mean, people all the time say, well, what's your experience of this? And I said, my practice is to pay attention to what's going on deep within me, not what's listening to the mind. I know what's listening to the mind is the mind. So who am I? And the good part is when you have people, at least for me, that are at that level that you can have these conversations with, it doesn't sound like you're crazy. How many people could you tell that to in the general population?
A very small percentage.
And the young people.
Yeah. Now I have found over years that the young people are more interested in this because they have a bigger curiosity level and they want to know more about it.
How young are you talking?
Huh?
What age when you say young?
18, 25.
Oh,
okay. I find that people under 12 will just accept what you say. And if you give them these principles, they start working them.
Mm-hmm.
They start producing. And what I find is that when they hit puberty, they get distracted. Maybe you're saying maybe that they maybe come back, but my experience is we could never hold a teenage group at our center. Little kids, we would have 30 to 50 on a Sunday. But once they went through puberty, boom, they were gone. They had other things to think about.
Yeah, nature takes over.
But still, the foundation was set, and they know that what they learned there was so, and they end up using it.
Yeah.
Without organization, without community, they just know that that's how it works. And I do it too. I'm an overthinker. I think things way too long. And when I catch myself doing that, I have a conversation that says, "What are you doing? How is this helping?" You're thinking the same thing over and over again. It's not changing anything. Stop it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can hear it and I can do something about it.
I found that when I was really young, I knew next to nothing. And now that I'm really old, I absolutely know nothing.
There you go. That's probably as wise as it gets. But there's some value to knowing you don't know.
Yeah, there is. And at least in the practice of non-duality and understanding what Michael Singer talks about, that group that lives in your head and is always chatting and doesn't pay rent.
I like that.
Yeah. And he has an interesting group that meets there. We've met him a couple of times at his place. And he was teaching for a while at the university there of Florida or something, what the university is there. But anyway, he was teaching economics, which is what his doctorate degree is in.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But he has a group that comes to his little chapel that has maybe room for 30 people or so. They're all under 20 years old.
Cool.
They're coming from the university because they want to know more about what he's teaching. and his is as he says, it's new thought, but it's also an age-old tradition that he's bringing forth, taught by Yogananda and the others. They're all
That takes us
fascinated
back
by
to
that.
the level of involvement of when the Druids were around. Tiny groups meeting in quaint little locations. You know, you're talking about a college campus that has tens of thousands of students, and he gets 30 in a room, which is lovely for the 30, but it's not changing the big picture. It's keeping the principles alive, thank God, but I'm not sure that it's having any kind of major impact on the culture.
The major impact on the culture tends to be the pop items.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
the hijacking of What the Bleep and the other programs that everybody can get real quickly, and they go out and try to make a fortune off of it.
Right.
When your first impulse is to become famous and rich, there's a lot of techniques out there to do that, and it's taught by a lot of people who understand that psychology. If you're trying to understand who's actually asking the questions, that's completely different.
Right.
But I have seen that philosophy has shifted in the science world, which is very interesting to me. There are more scientists now than practically any time that I know of that are more metaphysicians. They're finding the science is beginning to show some of the things that have been taught in a variety of ways. One of the interesting statistics, by a side note, is one of the things that hasn't dropped off of New Age and its growth is astrology. Astrology is growing stronger, and psychic phenomenon is growing stronger as a study.
We
People
have
want to know the future.
a minister in our movement that is actively involved in the study of astrology. Blows my mind. That would be
Really?
such an evil thing in past times,
Oh,
but
Holmes,
it's there. And
Holmes
then
didn't like it.
no, he didn't.
Astrology.
He tried it, as I understand, that he tried to connect with his wife after she passed,
Right.
Hazel, and it
Oh,
didn't work.
yeah.
And
No.
so he said, "This is all just fraud." And good for him. I don't care. I've always seen it as entertainment, but I have to say that I on my Instagram feed, I often get these little snippets about my astrological sign, and I'll be
Yeah.
damned if it isn't often accurate. And I don't know how that works.
I have done Vedic astrology for 40 years. And Vedic astrology is different from the Western astrology in a variety of ways. One of them is it's about your karmic path and what does that entail and what's the experience of that going to look like. And
Does that work with non-duality?
yeah, nothing works with non-duality, and it works well that way.
So it's universal.
Yeah. You can take this to Mars and they'd understand it. So it is interesting to me that the hugging saint Amma from India, who travels the world, has several Vedic astrologers that travel with her. And somebody finally asked her, you know, at the level of what you're doing, why do you have these astrologers there? And she says, well, there's a very important point. That is, people come up to get a hug. Oftentimes they're suffering from something deep. They've lost a person, their business has collapsed, whatever it might be. And what they want to know is, when is it going to stop? When am I going to get through this? And she says, I give them to one of the astrologers who runs their chart, and they can look at what's going on in their karmic path and give them an idea of to when it will get better. And it's amazing how well that works. And I've had several readings from them. And one of them, the first one that I had, we were in Chicago, and I was working, and I called a Vedic astrologer and I said, I don't know what's going on, but things are not doing well. And he says, oh, you're moving. And I said, no, we don't intend to move. Oh, well, we're going to move down the block. And he said, no, you're going to move in about 6 months. And neither one of us understood that. We traveled out to California. He sent me a date. He says, August 1st, you'll be moving.
Oh my God.
And we were like, no, no, no. So we're out in California, and I'm doing some business, and we come back through St. Louis, where Mary Jean is from. And we're sitting in a restaurant, and the waitress says, "Hey, I know a friend who's in real estate. They'd love to show you some of the real estate around town," because they were talking about homes. Anyway, off they went. Long story short is August 1st of 2000, we closed on a house in St. Louis.
Amazing.
To the exact date.
Wow.
And in addition
Consciously,
to that,
you knew that when that date was chosen for your closing, that the astrologer had said that? Was that all in your conscious thinking?
no, it wasn't,
Okay.
because I had forgotten about him predicting that we were going to move, because I rejected that we were going to move.
So
I
did you
was
fall
still-
down when you got the connection?
I was against moving to begin with. I wanted
Right.
to stay in Chicago. I'm not going anywhere. Why? Yeah. And I've had multiple experiences like that in that situation. And John, I've done astrological charts and astrographs for people down here who are in the spiritual movements,
Mhm.
and it's been pretty doggone accurate.
Wow.
In
Fascinating.
fact, I still have a number of those people that call me.
Let me ask this then. Do you think that people referring to astrologers of any sort, or people, psychics, whatever you want to term them, who can dip into the unified field, let's call it, and see these quote unquote future events, do you think people go to them because they get a sense of, okay, great, so I'll be safe maybe 6 months from now, versus just knowing it and allowing the universe to put everything together to bring it? Is it the idea that these practitioners are going to say to you, on this date, things will get better, and you're like, oh, phew, okay, well then I'll just keep going. Whereas the knowledge of, if I keep going and I keep replacing these thoughts with these thoughts and changing my belief system and my perspective on life, then this, that, or the other is going to show up. Is it the idea of somebody else saying, don't worry, August 1st, you're going to have a great new house in a fun city and you're going to love it? And you go, okay, whew, not you.
Yeah,
because you
I
were
think,
rejecting it, but
yes, I think there's that. And also I think there's an assumption there that a vast majority of people that are coming for these kinds of experiences have any knowledge at all about their thoughts creating their life. I think that they're coming because they're in a state of being, which is everything is falling apart, or I'm suffering, or things aren't going well, or I'm curious about somebody telling me about your service and what you do. There is a component of this, which is people that are suffering that want to know that this is going to end, and how are you going to tell them it's not going to end if it's not going to end? It's going to go on for 25 years or something, or you're going to die in a couple of weeks. And how do you turn that around and say, how is this predestined if you have free will? What part of free will enters into the changing of the chart? Complicated questions. But is there a predetermined? There's a group of philosophers that say everything is predetermined. There's another group that says nothing is predetermined, you have free will. And there's a group that's in between that.
Well, the universe has lots of predetermination. We can project where celestial bodies will be at any particular point in relation to the Earth. It's absolutely predictable. So why are we so different?
You're answering your own question.
No, I know.
Are we so different? No, we're not so different.
Maybe not.
And is everything predetermined? It's predetermined, and you have to keep going anyway.
Oh yeah, because the predetermination has it going anyway.
yeah, I believe
That's recursive thought, by the way.
What was that?
I said that's recursive thought, by the way.
Oh. I believe everybody's on a path based on their belief and perception and perspective on life and any work they're doing for themselves. And if they stay on that path without shaking it up in one way or another, then whatever the practitioner, the psychic, the astrologer is seeing, they're dipping into that path that you're on. So if you actively, consciously change that path, I don't think that messes with the idea of this predetermination that's there. And that's where our free will goes. Because I've talked to people who have gone to or the like, and I said, okay, well, that's probably what's going to happen unless you decide it's not going to.
So that's the in-between, predetermined, but also choosing.
I believe in the in-between. That there.
So when you come in as a baby and you understand absolutely nothing, and you have a disease that's going to kill you by the time you're 5 years old, is that predetermined or choice? And if it's predetermined, is it predetermined by a previous life?
Oh, no.
Well, that makes it sound like a punishment.
Yeah.
But it could be a cause effect.
No, it could be. It could be.
It's all speculation at this point anyway.
And whatever it is, whether it's the cancer in an infant or someone who lives over 100 years, they're all spiritual experiences. You know, when you get out of the right and wrong of the human sense of things, it's all an experience. And how could any of it be wrong? I mean, some of it is incredibly painful. Others is incredibly joyous. It's all spirit.
Yeah, I don't know that it doesn't gel for me in that way.
Okay.
What I understand that idea. It is all an experience, and truthfully, my belief is it's all a dream. It's a part of the oneness that dreams itself into existence and plays with this game, so to speak. This is the language that I have to explain it, and that it's all predetermined, and maybe it's not predetermined, and we don't know any of that until we get beyond asking those questions and find out who we are. And
I don't think we're supposed to know that while we're connected to a body.
Yeah, I think we are. I think it's the only way that we're able to know that is by having a body and an experience in this existence, is to know that that's what's there because it keeps calling to us in different ways to wake up. You wrote a whole book about spiritual awakening, and that whole idea is to wake up to what? What are we waking up to? We're waking up to what we already are, or is there something else?
I think we're waking up to what we already are, and we've just forgotten. And the process of awakening is simply to remember. Yeah.
The only thing that we can know for sure is, nothing.
So wise, Sensei.
Well, that was 50 minutes worth of
goodness gracious,
all over the place.
And that's why people aren't going to church.
That's right. Thanks for that. What's the practice we want to leave people with?
Oh, we want to leave with a practice.
Don't think about it, just do it.
There you go. There you
go. Give a level of critical thinking about everything. Don't take everything at just as it's given to you. Do some conscious consideration and then move on.
That's great.
When we lose critical thinking, even as 3 ministers, 3 doctors, a scientist, a psychologist, even with that full-blown education, if we don't continually consider above and beyond our education, stay, as Ernest said, open at the top, that's when civilization will start. And you you know, even if you're not going into a church community or whatever spiritual community, if you create your own spiritual community by always going past what you already know, then we'll be okay.
Yes, let's all live on the edge of understanding.